Molly's a senior art history major and began researching Dutch Baroque art in her junior year here at BC. She attended the Courtauld Institute of Art in London in the spring of last year, and where she completed her dissertation titled The New Town Hall in Amsterdam as Understood Through Henri Lefebvre's Triad of Social Space and Concept of Monumental Space. Upon returning to Boston College in the fall of 2013, she completed her senior paper titled Rembrandt's Minerva of 1635, Myth and Politics in the Dutch Golden Age, which is the topic of this talk. She is also presenting this paper at the Visual Cultural Consortium Undergraduate Research Symposium on April 12th at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. So without further ado, here comes Molly.
Thank you so much for that great introduction. So I'm here to talk to you guys about Rembrandt's Minerva of 1635, Myth and Politics in the Dutch Golden Age. Emerging from darkness in three-quarter view, a woman's soft, round visage looks over the viewer's left shoulder with an air of calm attention. Her wispy golden hair, crowned with a wreath of laurel, cascades over her shoulders and leads the eye to her luminescent golden cape. A strong light from the top left catches the folds in her elaborate gray costume and its delicate embroidered detail. Her left hand is poised on the book beside her, with her pinky finger seeming to hold her place in her reading at the exact moment when she has been interrupted from her studies. Attributes of war are juxtaposed alongside attributes of wisdom in this cramped study, forming one composite description of this female. She is Minerva, created by the Dutch master Rembrandt in 1635, and she is the focus of this study. This large painting, now displayed at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, has had an overwhelmingly private past. Records show that it has been kept in private collections since the late 17th century, but details of the commission of the work are unknown. In addition, connoisseurs have contested the attribution of this work to Rembrandt for the greater parts of the 19th and 20th century, impeding much scholarship on this painting. Rembrandt's Minerva of 1635, therefore, is long overdue for a thorough examination. In this talk, I will evaluate the piece within the frameworks of its mythological subject matter, of Rembrandt's oeuvre, and of the civil atmosphere in the Dutch Republic in this period, in an attempt to shed light on this painting as a critical piece of Rembrandt's body of work and determine its political implications for Rembrandt's possible patron. Two useful resources of recorded Greek myths that reference Minerva or Athena are Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. In these works, Homer captured the tales of the gods and their interactions with mortals. In the Odyssey, bright-eyed Athena is Odysseus's mythological companion, always described with a spear in her hand. In Homer's Iliad, Hector urges his relatives to go to the shrine of Athena, bringer of war wealth, to vow to slaughter 12 young bulls in her temple in order to bring luck to his deeds in the Trojan War. The virgin goddess Athena was a warrior who protected the king and citadel, and sanctuaries and temples in her name were often placed in city centers at protected heights. In Athens, the Parthenon was built for Athena in memory of victory in the Persian Wars. Religious rituals were focused around cult images of the goddess that depict her powerful, warlike nature, such as the statue of Athena Parthenos, shown here, formerly in the Parthenon at Athens. In this sculpture, Athena is depicted with the attributes of war, namely a helmet, a shield, and a shield decorated with griffins and sphinxes. The classical Greek Athena was reinterpreted under the name of Minerva in ancient Rome. Roman artworks bearing the image of Minerva commonly show her, much like the ancient Greeks, with attributes of war, such as her helmet, a spear, and a shield bearing the face of Medusa. A bull relief dating from the 1st century BC depicts her in this way, clutching her shield and wearing a helmet with poised attention. Continuing the practice of ancient Greek and Roman artists, the image of Minerva infiltrated the art world through to the Middle Ages and Renaissance period. In particular, one illustrated text from medieval France in the 13th century, called Échec Amoureux, includes an image of Venus, Juno, and Minerva, here labeled as Pallas, up here. I'm sorry for the grainy image also. It's very hard to find good pictures of 13th century texts, but Maggie did a great job. In a garden, allegorizing the moral concepts of the amorous, active, and contemplative life, respectively. This image is representative of a common motif in the history of depictions of Minerva throughout time, namely the use of the goddess as an allegorical symbol. Similarly, images of Minerva during the Renaissance period personified abstract ideas, but in this case, they most often dealt with humanist subject matter, which was the concept of celebrating human virtues, but at the same time maintaining an awareness of human limitations. A seminal work of Renaissance humanism that features the goddess Minerva is Botticelli's Palace and the Centaur of 1482. Minerva, crowned and swathed in laurel leaves, holds an enormous halberd in her left hand and clutches the hair of the centaur in her right. Her half-man companion writhes in discomfort, and his arms grasp the bows of battle around his chest and in front of his figure. Rather than partaking in warfare, Minerva is shown here confronting the embodiment of animalistic violence and enlightening it to the power of reason. In this way, this work highlights the wisdom of Minerva over her authority as the goddess of war. As can be deduced by the examples shown, throughout the history of Minerva as a subject matter, her attributes of war are most often the predominant focus of her depiction. Rembrandt's picture of 1635 fits into the history of depictions of Minerva in a crucial way and signifies an important choice that must have been made by the artist prior to its creation: Minerva as active or Minerva as contemplative. Rembrandt created this image of Minerva where her attributes of war fall into the shadows of the background and her attributes of wisdom are highlighted for a particular purpose. Minerva is the embodiment of potential energy in this 1635 work. Her right hand holds her weight as she rises from her velvet chair. She is poised at the exact moment when she is interrupted from her studies. Her lips are slightly parted as if she is about to impart wisdom onto the viewer. Her pose shows us that this is not simply a portrait of a goddess. Rather, this is a personal view of a day in the life of Minerva, who was quietly studying until someone or something interrupted her scholarship. A strong light enters the composition from the top left, as you can see here, mimicking the style of Rembrandt's scholar in a study motif, where the light that illuminates the figure is representative of knowledge or intellectual illumination, such as his scholar seated at a table from 1634. This light hits the side of Minerva's face and also highlighting her fleshiness and round features. The light also picks up the folds in her garment, adding to their luminescence and realistic tactile qualities. Additionally, this light confronts the surface of the book opened in front of her, connecting the glowing goddess with the object of her study brightly and fluidly. In this way, Rembrandt shines a spotlight, quite literally, on the goddess's bodily form in the large book in front of her. Interestingly, both of these ideas are not what are normally associated with Minerva. Moreover, Minerva is a goddess, but still appears extremely human in this image. Her visage is beautiful but not idealized. In fact, she looks like an average woman of the Dutch Golden Age, especially when compared to his Saskia's Flora of 1635, a portrait of Rembrandt's first wife. By depicting this goddess in such a contemporary, corporeal way, Rembrandt instills a personal touch to this painting. Rembrandt painted Minerva once before in 1631, in a style that barely hints at her defining attributes. In this work, her attributes of war, namely her gorgon-faced shield, her spear, and her helmet, are represented ever so faintly in the background, which is quite hard to see with so much light in here, but it's there, I promise. Barely discernible on a table at her knees are an overturned lute and a book, representations of the arts and knowledge. Similarly, Rembrandt's Pallas Athena of 1635 depicts the goddess with solely her attributes of war, only hinting at her connection to wisdom with the owl perched atop her helmet here. As can be seen, the personality, spirit, and intrigue offered by Rembrandt's 1635 Minerva is not matched by any other depiction of the goddess by this Dutch master. The influence that compositional objects have on Rembrandt's art is touched upon in Mieke Ball's Reading Rembrandt. In this work, Ball states that the compositions in Rembrandt's works make deliberate allusions. Ball uses Rembrandt's inclusion of a dog, here in the bottom right, in his copy of Leonardo's The Last Supper to express this theory, stating that it denotes more than just a depiction of the sense of space that one art historian once suggested. Rather, Ball believes that this detail is used by Rembrandt to display a confusion of moods, a mixture of holiness and everyday vulgarity, and shifts the work from a biblical to a genre scene. If we are to read Rembrandt's composition in his Minerva of 1635 in this manner as well, we are led to form an analysis that takes into account the implications of the compositional details with which he forms his pictures. The cultural climate of the Dutch Republic when Rembrandt created his Minerva in 1635 shaped his mental set when approaching this work and led him to construct this mythological subject in a way that was relevant to his society. In this moment in time, the Dutch Republic was in the middle of a great flourishing. However, this flourishing was the result of many years of war and unrest. Beginning in the late 16th century, the provinces of the Habsburg Netherlands in the north were involved in the 80 Years' War in order to gain independence from Spain and Philip II. For the people of the Netherlands, in the aftermath of the fight for independence against the Spanish, war was no longer a noble quest for valiant men. War killed family members, starved populations, and destroyed homes. As a result of their involvement in the 80 Years' War, the Dutch became a major power not only in Europe, but also across the globe. The numerous battles fought at sea for their independence led the Dutch to develop an advanced and highly effective naval force that fought locally and abroad in the East Indies and the Americas, laying the foundation for a global colonial empire that fueled their economy. However, despite this great economic blossoming, colonial holdings during the Golden Age were oftentimes characterized by armed conflict. In addition, after the Protestant Reformation, which began in the early 16th century, Christian sentiments on the return of the Antichrist and the end of days became an increasingly more prevalent part of the religious rhetoric. For this reason, political as well as religious differences were seen as holy wars. Given these socio-political circumstances in the period surrounding Rembrandt's creation of Minerva, it is intriguing that he chose to depict the goddess of war with her peaceful attributes of wisdom in the forefront of the work. The Holland that Rembrandt knew was practically centered on war. This may have in fact led Rembrandt to turn away from the traditional method of depicting Minerva with her attributes of war and instead focus on the wisdom of the goddess. In a society plagued by warfare, it would have been understandable for the artist to create an image that places a peaceful, contemplative life over a violent, active one for his patrons and art market. It is known that 2 or 3 of Rembrandt's mythological paintings were certainly made for the Amsterdam art market without a particular patron in mind. Thus, Amsterdam art patrons had an appetite for these classical pictures. However, given the provenance of many of his other works, it is still possible that one of Rembrandt's many patrons commissioned this picture. Additionally, it is possible that this picture was created with the wider art market in mind, knowing that classical interests were rife in Amsterdam society during this era. Still, based on this research, one's concept can be nearly accepted as fact. Rembrandt did not create this painting out of merely his own interest in classical subject matter. His interest in humanism and classical ideas was minimal, shown by his decision to quit school as a teen. This supports the notion that he created this piece with a specific patron or market in mind. Rembrandt was not the only artist to use Minerva as a subject matter during the Baroque period. In the 17th century across Europe, a trend of depicting leaders associated with or embodied as the goddess Minerva or Minerva Pacifera arose. This practice was most common for female rulers who needed to show their authority in the patriarchal government systems that defined Europe. For example, Christina of Sweden, who ruled from 1633 to 1654, was dubbed the Pallas of the Century in multiple texts for her reign characterized by peace. In order to entrench herself in the history of this era of peace in Westphalia, she made a medal in 1649 to 1650, in which she was depicted as Minerva Pacifera with an olive branch in hand. Right there. In the Dutch Netherlands, male regents were often shown depicted with the goddess Minerva as a way of associating their abilities in the arts and in war with those of a classical deity. In fact, William II of Orange, the stadtholder of the Netherlands and successor of Prince Frederick Hendrik from 1647 until his death in 1650, used this type of imagery as propaganda for his ability to usher in peace after a period of conflict. A medal created in 1641 by Johann Bloom after the wedding of William II of Orange and Mary of England displays this notion allegorically. In a feat of gender reversal, William of Orange is depicted as the goddess Minerva, holding an olive branch out to his new wife, Mary of England, who is dressed as the allegorical symbol for peace, or pax. So that's William II dressed as Minerva, and that is Mary of England. Although this image of Minerva is technically female, she is very powerful, masculine, and is surrounded by the attributes of war. Beneath her feet is the crumbled body of Bellona, symbolizing Minerva's, or William II's, triumph over warfare. In Bettina Baumgartel's essay, Is the King Genderless? The Staging of the Female Regent as Minerva Pacifera, the author states, quote, "Within the context of the 30 Years' War and the struggle of the northern Netherlands against Spain, which had lasted almost 80 years, the allegorical meaning of the goddess as personification of the victory over Bellona was foregrounded to such an extent that even a ruler could present himself with dignity in this role. In this way, the gender of Minerva is irrelevant. Minerva at this moment in time in the Dutch Republic represented the power of peace and intellect over warfare." The people of the Dutch Republic during the 17th century were in favor of classical motifs that reference a reestablishment of peace after the decades of war they had just been through in order to achieve their independence from Spain. Also, William II's commission of a medal tells us that this ruler wanted this image of him to be widespread throughout his country, as numismatics are a media that can be copied and dispersed throughout society. Overall, this work supports the notion that the subject of Minerva was used in the 17th century in the Dutch Republic to elevate wisdom and peace over warfare. In this way, it is reasonable to suggest that Rembrandt's Minerva of 1635 was also used to imply the value of wisdom over warfare during this period. Rembrandt's Minerva of 1635 presents many complicated questions to the art historian, especially because the original commission of the work is still unknown. The fact that he depicted a mythological subject provided him the opportunity to adapt that subject according to his own purpose and the appetite of the audience for whom this picture was created. The tradition of Minerva in art, the chaste goddess of war and wisdom, is one characterized overtly by the trappings of war, making Rembrandt's 1635 version a break from the past and a response to the tenets of Dutch politics and religion during the Golden Age. It is a dazzling union of Rembrandt's knowledge of the past and observance of the present, setting the stage for depictions of Minerva in the future.